How much do we know then, Charlotte, about the impact of sound on our health?
So we define noise really as unwanted sound, but of course what might be a noise to me might not be a noise to you. You might consider it a sound. So
yes, I'm sat there tapping on my phone, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a real subjective sort of aspect to it. But in terms of, if we think in terms of decibels, which is the metric we use to measure noise and sound, there are certain levels that we know are not good for you.
And we're talking really about more than the obvious here, because everybody knows if you expose somebody to really loud noise for a long period of time, it damages their hearing. Think of all the aged rock stars. But it has a much wider effect on the body, and that's what the latest science is showing, isn't it?
Yes, it can be really difficult for people to understand that interaction between the physics of sound and actually how it impacts your biology. But there's increasing evidence for a range of effects, which we call non-auditory effects. So that's effects on things other than your ears and on your hearing system. And so we find there are effects on things like your cardiovascular, your heart health, children's learning, sleep.
I think we all kind of like have this kind of feeling that maybe the world's getting noisier, but I don't know if that's just people getting older or if it actually genuinely is getting noisier.
Yes, I think it's hard to prove with data, but actually anecdotally, if you think about it, there's a lot more road traffic, a lot more air travel, the population's gone up.
And do we have a sense of what is the volume that is healthy and what's the volume that is not healthy?
Yeah, there's some debate, but the World Health Organization sets different levels for different noise sources. For road traffic noise, it's 53 for your day, evening, night, and 45 for your night time. Aircraft noise, it's 45 decibels for your day, evening, night, which is quite low, and 40 at night. And then for railway, the levels are similar to road traffic noise.
And quite a lot of us living in a world that's louder than that.
We know, for example, that 27% of people in England live above the WHO guideline for road traffic noise.
Okay, and anything above that you're thinking of?
That's where adverse health effects start
to kick in. Okay, so I'm coping with like a 5-month-old baby at home, so I'm very used to annoying sounds that scythe through me. So I don't know if that means I'm super sensitive at the moment, or if actually it's kind of like, this has got nothing on a baby crying, so shall we find out?
Indeed. So James, we're going to play you a series of sounds, and actually we're going to start off with some sounds that we think you'll like.
Okay, hit me. I'm just stood here imagining being in my hammock at the bottom of the garden, just relaxing, so this is all good times for me.
That sounds nice. Now see what you think of this one.
I find this really annoying. But I think it's the contrast between the two is making me kind of like go, oh, I'm not relaxed anymore. I was enjoying it before, now I'm...
Yeah, there is a leap, isn't there? So James, here's another noise.
Okay, you're going to think I'm really weird now. I really like water sounds, and I even have like an app on my phone that plays like rain noises that I sometimes listen to at work to help me concentrate.
Oh wow!
So I'm completely at home right now. So those were my opinions on those sounds. You also made me fill out a questionnaire to try and get a sense of, well, what were you trying to get a sense of?
So I was seeing how noise sensitive you were.
You can tell me the conclusions, but I have a sneaky feeling I think I might be quite sensitive to noise.
So it won't surprise you that you are noise sensitive. You scored in the top 30%. You were really tolerant actually of being interrupted when working, but actually I did wonder if you had misphonia, where you have this emotional reaction to everyday sounds, and it's quite common. And actually it tends to be to sounds that other people don't even notice.
Got a slight moment of oversharing. When we're having breakfast at home, my partner just knows not to eat toast next to me because they want it. So
you're not alone. Apples are banned in my house, so I think it's
quite
common.
I might just going to come across as really weird. It's always good to be diagnosed like. Okay, so Charlotte, you've correctly and successfully identified that I have an awkward relationship with sound sometimes, and we're going to come back to some of the health impacts in a little bit. But I want to, first of all, get you to listen to this, because this was what happened when I spoke to somebody who really does see the way the sound affects their day-to-day life.
Hi, my name is Shaka Hussain. I live in North Manchester area, Crumpsall, and I lived here for just about 22 years now. I live on the main road, and it's a route in and out of not only city centre, but the local amenities like the local hospital, ambulances, police, a couple of schools, primary school, high schools. I have a bus stop directly outside my front door.
Oh, you get that like thing, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, you get that swish sound. I would say, for me, it's a nightmare. Imagine having a dentist drilling
Yeah.
constantly for 8 hours. Slow drilling.
That's deeply, deeply unpleasant. What impact does all that noise have on you?
Sleep deprived is one of the words I can say. That makes me unwell, could give me a headache, could make me cranky. I run a charity and they're thinking, oh, what's wrong with him today? He's a bit moody today. I've suffered from heart scares in the past where I've had angina attack and stuff like that a few years back. So now as I'm getting older, I feel I'm getting weaker on that side as well. Just, yeah, the list can go on.
What's a bad night's sleep?
Last night for me is an example of one of the worst nights because according to my wife, first of all I was talking in my sleep because I was restless because I couldn't fall into a deep sleep. Then I got up probably just after 2:30, sports car, just drove past the house, woke me up, and after that it was a nightmare for me. I couldn't go back to sleep. Even now, my eyes feel really heavy. I feel like a little bit of a tension headache.
Is it something that gets better over time?
It never gets better. What I do now is I try to blank it out. Sometimes I can't. So what do I turn to? I turn to coming downstairs and I think, you know what, I'll put a bit of telly and see if that helps me. But it doesn't. What I've done is I've created more noise for myself and so it's not really helping me at all. I will turn to food as well. A bar of chocolate or whatever we have. The living has gone up so much, we're a family of 5. I've got 3 boys. The only way we're going to be able to move from here is once my boys have kind of flown the nest. Me and Chandra, my wife, we've retired. Unless we win the lottery, of course.
Oh, well, we're all holding out for that one, aren't we? Does that make it worse then, Shaka, knowing that you're almost trapped by circumstance? You can't escape that noise.
It makes you feel helpless. I wish I could do more, but I'm trying my best, and that's all I can do.
I don't know how you're so chipper when we're chatting.
It's just my way of getting through the day.
Well, Shaka, thanks so much for talking to me, and have a joyous Eid.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, and to yourself as well. And I would say Eid Mubarak in advance to you.
Well, we're back now in the Arup Sound Lab with Professor Charlotte Clark, exploring the relationship between the human body and sound and when that becomes a hazard to health. And we can hear that it does have a profound effect on some people's lives.
It really can impact people's quality of life, their health and their day-to-day activities and living.
I think one of the things that's going to be interesting is kind of like how sound does change the body, and that's what we're going to explore next, isn't it?
Yes, we're going to hand over to Adam Thomas here from Arup.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, James.
So what do you need me to do?
So it's quite simple. We're just going to put this wearable device on your wrist. It just looks like a watch. It's got 3 different sensors on it. It measures your body temperature, it measures your heart rate, and probably the most interesting one is how much you sweat, your skin conductance.
Right then, strap it on, nice and tight.
Okay, James, we're going to play you 4 or 5 sounds now and measure your reaction with that wearable device. And Charlotte's going to take you through the noise annoyance scale.
So in Noise and Health, we're quite unusual. We have our own health outcome that no one else uses, which is called annoyance. And James, I've given you a questionnaire where you're going to be asked after each sound, how much would that noise bother, disturb or annoy you?
You've already identified me as a noise freak, so...
Yeah, I'm sort of expecting where you're going to be.
Ready?
Okay. I just ticked the extremely annoying box because I was just trying to imagine trying to go to sleep at night or trying to sit there and do some work or read a book, and that amount of traffic noise would do my head in.
Absolutely. Your heart rate didn't change, but actually you did sweat slightly more.
Great, traffic makes me sweaty. Learned something today.
Okay, let's go for sound number 2, James.
I used to live live under Belfast City Airport's flight path. I don't need to be played the sound to tell you that that's extremely annoying.
We saw a response with the measurement of your sweat. And actually there were two changes. So when you could first hear the plane coming in the background, it went up. And then when it got up to peak level for that noise, you went up again.
Okay, James, it might get a little bit worse.
I'm already at extremely. I need a bigger scale.
Okay, let's see what you make of this one.
I feel like I physically felt some of that in my teeth.
Yeah, it sort of sets you on edge,
Yeah.
that sort of noise. So I'm going to guess you went extremely,
Yeah, I did.
extremely annoying. And again, we saw a response with the sweat, and actually it was a bigger response than you had for the airplane.
Have you nudged my heart rate yet?
No, you look like you're uber fit.
It's a challenge for you. Go on.
It's a challenge, yeah. We're going to have to get something even worse and even louder.
Let's try something a little bit different in sound.
I'm still calling everything extremely annoying. It's possibly going to be my answer for all of these. But I didn't actually find it as bad as the previous.
So that was a breaker breaking up concrete. Actually, your sweat response was still there. It went up again, and it was higher even than the last one. So it just shows you that you might not always be aware how biologically you're reacting to noise. And you even saw a slight change in your heart rate there.
You got that.
Yeah, but it wasn't a massive change.
Okay, last one, James.
There's not one sound from DJ Adam's playlist from Hell that I've enjoyed. So Charlotte, what's the overall picture from those sounds Adam played?
Your heart rate went up from your resting heart rate, but only slightly. And actually you sweated in response to those noises. So really, you're biologically responding.
I think most people are probably at home, a bit like me, going, what's sweating got to do with the noise of a tram? So can you kind of join the dots for me from a sound that's being made to how my body is reacting?
Yeah, so when you're hearing that sound, obviously your auditory system, your hearing system's dealing with that. But what you probably don't realise is that a part of your brain that processes emotion and stress, called the amygdala, that's also responding and interpreting that sound. Your body then releases stress hormones, and ultimately these stress hormones are what drive effects down the line.
So is it that a bit like the fight or fight response thing going on?
Absolutely.
Okay, so heart rate goes up, ready to pump more oxygen and stuff around the body in case I need to book it or something.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're running your body like that for a long time, it causes other stress in your body. So your heart rate's higher, blood fats change, it can even change how your body handles glucose, sugar. These are all things that ultimately are risk factors for you developing heart disease, having a heart attack, having a stroke, and things like that.
Why does everyone's brain do that? Why are we attuned to sound in that way that can cause long-term damage?
So it's important to remember that we never turn our ears off, okay? So those biological responses you have, even if you're asleep, you might still be having those.
Even if you're asleep?
Yes, so even if you're asleep, if I flew a plane over you, it's quite likely your heart rate would go up.
Even if I didn't wake up?
Even if you
Well, I
didn't
think I would wake up. But I'm just wondering, if you live next to a busy road and it doesn't quieten down even overnight,
Yeah.
your body's still having little spikes of heart rate,
Totally.
sweating more, having all those
Yeah.
stress hormones flooding your body.
Yeah.
You've really surprised me with that, Charlotte, because I just had always thought that, if you're in a deep enough sleep, you're kind of, unless there's a very loud baby crying, which I can tell you, experience, it definitely wakes you up in the middle of the night. Unless it's loud enough to wake you up, you're just out of it. And that's, I suppose, what adds up over a long period of time to those health risks.
Absolutely. It's also really interesting. We find even if you've lived in these places for a long time, you still have those physiological reactions.
So you never learn to
Yeah,
cope
you
with
don't
it.
adapt. There's no adaptation to it.
Do we know how much exposure over how long it takes? Because I'm hoping you haven't given me type 2 diabetes in these experiments.
No, I mean, it's a really long exposure, and we're talking about people who would be exposed for many hours over the average day and night, and for many years. So we think these effects happen from about 10 to 20 years worth of exposure.
Has anyone attempted to add it all up as to how big an impact it's having on the nation's health?
So last year the UK Health Security Agency published a paper where they looked at how many years of healthy life were lost in England for transportation noise, and the figures are quite large. So for road traffic noise they estimated that 100,000 years of healthy life were lost.
So that's like some people might be dying younger than they should have been, or having a heart attack years younger than they would have done. What about mental health?
Yes, there is some evidence for effects on mental health. So for example, increased rates of depression and anxiety and things that you might expect. And again, this makes sense to us because if you're annoyed, that's a stress response. That can ultimately lead to those stress hormones being released that are related to things like depression and anxiety.
One thing I've been wondering while I've been chatting, Charlotte, is how do we know and really know that it's the noise? If you talk about road noise, well, there's going to be a lot of air pollution coming off that road. Some of the noisier areas of the country are possibly more linked to poverty, and kind of like that has health consequences. So how do you actually know, properly know that noise is an issue as well?
Good question, James. So what we do is that we actually look at these effects of noise on these health outcomes, but we also measure a whole host of other things. So we adjust our models for air pollution as well as noise to see if it is the noise that has the effect, to try and disentangle noise and air pollution, which, as you say, often
They
go
often come
hand
together,
in,
yeah.
they're often hand in hand.
How does it compare to other things? Like, how big an issue is noise pollution? Because there are so many things that are bad for our health, from like smoking to not getting enough exercise to drinking too much. Does it kind of sit in that pantheon of?
It probably sits a little bit below them. So we always say these effects are small, but I think the thing to remember is that actually you've got a lot of the population exposed.
If you do a small thing to millions of people, it adds up quickly.
Absolutely.
Well, Charlotte, I think I just need to chill for a little bit, if that's okay. So I've been chatting to another scientist. It's all about kind of like the soundscape.
A soundscape is kind of like the oral equivalent of a landscape. It tends to also include your perception and response. I'm Bill Davis. I'm Professor of Acoustics and Perception at Salford University, and I'm a soundscape researcher.
And when it comes to sound and how we feel about it, is volume the only thing that matters? Leading question if you ever had one there, Bill.
To my friend and colleague Charlotte, it is pretty much all that matters. I mean, to her, a Beethoven symphony or road traffic noise, it's all the same. If it's loud enough, it's bad for you. And while that is true, I think that volume is not all that matters. So there are some kinds of sounds that we find pleasant, so the sound of a busy town market.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of Foo Fighters concert at the volume of a library is probably quite disappointing.
Yeah, that's right. And quite a lot of us enjoy seeking out loud sound experiences when it's what we're expecting. But that doesn't mean that we want that kind of sound level all the time, of course.
How is our soundscape, I've learnt a new word today, changing?
The noise sources individually are probably getting more numerous, but, and this one might be a bit hard to believe, most of the unwanted noise sources are actually getting quieter.
Can you tell that to my neighbours? Do people tend to like the same soundscapes, or is it an incredibly personal thing and actually something that one person loves and another person hates?
Well, both things are true, actually. The typical thing that we find over and over again in research is that natural soundscapes are preferred to human soundscapes, and those in turn are preferred to mechanical soundscapes. But it shouldn't be surprising that we can have very different taste in what things sound like. There are a small number of people who really do like traffic noise. I've met some of them.
How much of that is down to personal control? Because if I'm at a party, I like the music, I like the chat. If, you know, a house down the street is having a party at 2 in the morning and I'm trying to do something else, I have a very different response to all the same sounds.
So for both wanted and unwanted sound, if we can control our exposure to it, we tend to be a lot happier.
Are there any examples where soundscapes actually improve people's health, or is it just an absence of
It's the kind of things you might imagine, that sort of exposure to green nature type soundscapes, so the sound of the park, the sound of the local river, and there have been several studies that show that, yes, that those decreased stress, including having effects on hormones in the blood, people say they feel more relaxed. I'm not sure that we can completely disentangle yet the positive benefits from exposure to a nature-based soundscape to just going outside makes you feel better.
Good, thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers.
Well, we're back in the Sound Lab with Professor Charlotte Clark. We talked a lot about physical health. How about how sounds affect how the brain works?
Absolutely. So sound, of course, can be hugely distracting to us in our daily lives. And so we're going to get you to do a test to see how you react, how you perform in certain sound conditions.
Okay, once again, I think I might know the answer because I do sit next to somebody who's one of the loudest people in the world.
Excellent. This
But we all
sounds
have
good.
that colleague, don't we?
I think we've all got one of them. So we're going to ask you to do the Stroop
And if you don't
test.
have one of them, it's you, right?
Yeah. So we're going to ask you to do the Stroop test. So this is a very well-known test of cognition. It's a
Okay,
test your
so
attention.
the word might say blue, but the colour might be red.
Yeah.
And you needed to say
Red. Not blue.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to do the Stroop test in noisy conditions.
And here's your colleague from work.
Yeah, and here's your colleague who you were talking about. And then we're also going to get you to do it in quieter conditions, and we'll see if there's a difference.
Right, I'm going to hit the play within 3, 2, 1, and go. So green, that was wrong. That's green, that's green, this sounds like my office, that's red, done. So I scored 23.
That's quite a good score, James, despite the noise.
Have I mentioned again, I have a newborn baby, I'm not going to get any sleep, this is just a mean test.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing, you're already tired as well. So if you had lots of noise exposure in the night, you'd be tired as well. So here's the next condition for you to have a go at.
Red, red's freezing. 29.
Excellent.
That was alright, I felt like I was in the zone there.
Yeah, you were
I was
able to
at flow, I had
concentrate.
flow, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a printer in the last one? Just like,
Yes.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was the one that was getting me. It was just like you trying to focus on something and then you just go back.
Yeah, and it was quite regular actually,
Yeah.
which is quite disruptive.
Yeah. What does it tell us about, I don't know, everything from schools to work environments?
So we know there's evidence that road traffic and aircraft noise affects children's learning in schools. What's really interesting is in the UK, a 5 dB difference in aircraft noise exposure at school was associated with a 1 to 2 month reading delay for those children.
Oh wow, so a little bit more noise makes...
Yeah, so again, that's a small effect, but you think if that multiplies over the education of a child, that could end up having a slightly larger impact on their learning outcomes.
So Charlotte, we've done the physical health stuff, we've done a little bit of kind of like how it affects our brain. Overall, what impact is sound having on our bodies, and do we as a society recognise that?
When I started 20 years ago in this field, there was a lot of
Were you
scepticism.
the only one?
I wasn't the only one, but people thought you were pretty mad when you told them what you did at a party. But actually, the past 2 decades, there's really been a growth in the evidence.
Are there any people who are particularly vulnerable?
Poorer people in society have much higher noise exposure where they live. And for example, people who have poor mental health, they respond more to noise.
And some people are just more susceptible anyway, aren't they? Just I'm thinking autism often comes with a sound sensitivity.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of focus now developing on what we call oral diversity. So today we've assumed that everybody hears in the same way and that you and I standing here are hearing these things in the same way. There's increasing acknowledgement that people hear differently.
But what should we take away from this?
I think we should be worried to some extent because it is everywhere. And I think the levels exposed are quite high in terms of the population.
Is there anything you can do about this? Because like if you live in a place that is really noisy, like it's not really a solution just to say, well, live somewhere else.
We have to remember that a lot of people don't choose where they live or can't afford to move.
So what can you do?
You can do things like wear earplugs, Actually, sometimes if you're really getting annoyed, taking yourself out of that situation can be a good solution. So distract yourself, move rooms, see if it's better somewhere else. You can always talk to people who are making the sound, see if you can try and find a resolution.
Whose responsibility is it then to sort out noise?
Oh, good question. It varies by different settings and what the noise source is, but I do think one thing that we can all do is actually think about how noisy we are ourselves in certain situations.
Charlotte, thank you so much for having me in the lab today. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned loads. You put me through the ringer a bit mentally, but apart from that, it's been great.
Yeah, it's been good fun.
I think having played so many really, really annoying sounds, I think we should go for a nice one to end the programme, don't you?
Absolutely.
Because I grew up near the seaside, I just love the sound of waves.
Inside Health was presented by James Gallagher. The producer was Jerry Holt. And you can contact the programme team on insidehealth@bbc.co.uk.
Hello, it's Chris McCausland, and I am here just to tell you that the new series of my comedy panel show is coming your way.
Oh, I say, you're terrible.
We've more all-star guests, including Sue Pollard, Desiree Birch, Milton Jones, Mel Gedridge, Deliso Chaponda, and Lucy Beaumont. Lucy, what's in my hands?
Rustily great.
And they'll be deciphering sounds whilst trying not to muck about too much on the way. Is this a gong or a massive bell?
A gong.
It's a massive bell! And you heard it here first with me, Chris McCausland, at the new time of 11 p.m. Saturday night on Radio 4 or BBC Sounds.
BBC News at 10 o'clock. Two charities delivering food in Gaza have said they're suspending operations after 7 aid workers, one reportedly British, were killed in an Israeli airstrike. World Central Kitchen said its team had been on a convoy which had just been unloading aid brought into Gaza by sea when it was attacked. Israel's military said it was conducting a thorough review at the highest levels into what it called a tragic incident. Merav Michaeli is the leader of Israel's opposition Labour Party.
This is a horrible tragedy, and I know that on our side, the military already announced that it will investigate exactly what happened there, but certainly the whole humanitarian issue must be dealt better, and part of the criticism that I have on my government is that it does not and did not from the beginning realize that it has to separate better between Hamas and between civilians who are uninvolved.
Labour has expressed doubts about the government's ability to deliver its promise of 15 hours of free term-time childcare per week for 2-year-olds, saying it doesn't believe enough places are available. The Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, says she expects to see more than 150,000 parents benefit. 3 13-year-olds have been injured in a school shooting in Finland. The suspect, who's the same age, has been arrested. The shooting happened in the city of Vantaa just before 9 o'clock this morning. An 80-year-old man who was arrested at Heathrow Airport after 27 years on the run is due in court today. Richard Burrows had been charged with 13 historical sexual abuse offences, which were alleged to have taken place at a children's home in Cheshire in the 1960s and 70s. He failed to attend his trial at Chester Crown Court in 1997. With type 1 diabetes in England are to be offered what's been called an artificial pancreas. It can calculate and deliver the correct amount of insulin to patients using a glucose sensor under the skin. BBC News.
A brief reminder that the Book of the Week now has a new time slot here on Radio 4. You can hear it on weekday mornings at 11:45. And the book this week is Cloistered by Catherine Coldstream. It's her account of becoming a Carmelite nun and the reason why she dramatically left the order 10 years later. Book of the Week at 11:45. Add to playlist is at 11. Now though, it's Woman's Hour with Emma Barnett.
Good morning, welcome to the programme. I hope you had a decent bank holiday weekend. Perhaps chocolate was consumed, perhaps sunshine was felt, perhaps you did very little at all, or maybe you felt rushed off of your feet. Either way, we are here. We are back on the other side of Easter. I spent my weekend in Broadstairs for the first time, and it was bracing and charming in equal measure. Delicious fish and ice cream were consumed, but not, I hasten to add, at the same time. And I can't quite still find myself getting to grips with embracing being cold on the beach, despite how lovely the sound of the sea and the sight of it is. But J.K. Rowling, one of the world's most successful authors and famous women, spent part of her bank holiday weekend challenging police in Scotland to arrest her. This is because, as of yesterday, Scotland's new hate crime law came in. The Hate Crime and Public Order Act 2021 creates a new crime of stirring up hatred relating to age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity, or being intersex. Noticeably, the law does not protect women as a group from hatred. The Scottish Government is expected to include this later in a separate misogyny law. J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author, who lives in Edinburgh, in a series of social media posts described several transgender women as men, including convicted prisoners, trans activists and other public figures. She said freedom of speech and belief was at an end if accurate description of biological sex was outlawed, and invited police to arrest her if they believe she has committed an offence. Misgendering and stirring up hatred relating to transgender identity, that's what she's honing in on. Shortly, we're going to unpack what this new law is designed to do, or new part of the law is designed to do, and how it might work in practice. Yesterday, Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, said that the new law would deal with a rising tide of hatred. Do you agree with J.K. Rowling and those who share her concerns, or is such an act necessary? Just to remind you, it is Scotland we're talking about. I should also say, we invited J.K. Rowling onto Woman's Hour today, but haven't heard back yet. You can text the programme though, you can be in touch, you can have your voice heard on 84844, text will be charged at your standard message rate. On social media, we're at BBC Woman's Hour. You can email me through the Woman's Hour website, or send a WhatsApp message or voice note using the number 03700 100 444. Just watch those data charges. As you know, I want to hear from you. Please do get in touch. Many of you are kind enough to do so when we're on air, and sometimes when we're not on air. So we do use those messages too where we can, and we get a sense of what you think. So please get in touch this morning about that and anything else you hear, because also on today's programme, Art and Motherhood, a new exhibition seeks to bring the two together. We'll hear why this is a rarer act than perhaps you think. And the actor Rachel Sterling will be here to talk about Sarah Siddons, the Queen of Drury Lane at the end of the 18th century. More to come, and even more actually, some other stories too, so do stay with me and do get in touch. But freedom of speech and belief are at an end in Scotland if the accurate description of biological sex is deemed criminal. So says author and feminist campaigner J.K. Rowling. Her words, as I said, part of a lengthy thread on social media following the news yesterday of the introduction of Scotland's new hate crime law. The Act creates a crime of stirring up hatred. I gave you that list, but just to remind you, relating to age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity, or being intersex. It has been controversial, to say the least. In a moment, I'll be talking to Susan Smith, co-director of the group For Women Scotland, to hear about the concerns some women have. The BBC has heard from Vic Valentine of the charity Scottish Trans, who says that the organisation supports the law because of this serious impact that hate crime can have on LGBTI people. I should say we invited the SNP onto Woman's Hour this morning, but we didn't hear back. First, let me talk to John Boothman, journalist for The Times and Sunday Times based in Scotland. John, good morning.
Morning, Emma.
What's in the law?
I think it's worth saying at the very beginning, and you pointed this out in your introduction, that the law was given royal assent 3 years ago, and the reason that it's taken so long to work out what to do about the law is the difficulties in enforcing that, and the police have spent 3 years trying to work that out. So it came into force yesterday. What the law does is it broadens the existing offence of stirring up hatred. It's extended that to that long list of characteristics that you gave earlier. You rightly point out it doesn't include hatred of women, it doesn't include sex in that, but it also provides that there can be harsher sentences, up to 7 years in fact, for those convicted of crimes to be considered to be aggravated by prejudice. That is that offenders have to demonstrate malice or ill will towards their victim based on those protected characteristics. Now, there's two legal tests of that: whether a person behaved in a manner that a reasonable person would consider to be threatening or abusive, and the second is whether the person intended to stir up hatred against a group or a person with those characteristics. Only if those two tests are met will there be a prosecution, and it's widely recognised by legal experts that that second test about proving whether a person is intending to stir up hatred against a group or a person is quite a high bar. So what you get is supporters of the Act will tell you that they don't think there will be many prosecutions as a result of that. I think it's fair to say in the past week a lot of attention has really focused on the reporting and the recording of these incidents, but as I say, supporters of the Act would say they don't expect that many prosecutions. That's what makes the J.K. Rowling intervention interesting yesterday. Will she be prosecuted or will she not? Is misgendering someone an offence under this Act or not? We await to see what the police will do about it.
Do we have any idea? I mean, not just focusing on her, but I suppose she has put herself in this in a very specific way. Do we know if those sorts of messages, I gave a flavour of them, people can check them out at their own free will, but are they going to fulfil those two criteria that you spoke about, malice or ill will or intended to stir up hatred? How do you diagnose those things?
Well, that's the interesting question that the police operationally will need to decide. I think it would be fair to say that those people who support the Act probably do think that J.K. Rowling may be prosecuted for this, and those people who are opposed to the legislation, well, would think that perhaps she won't be.
And in terms of the police and the support for, as you said, there's been a lot of time in between trying to figure this out since this first came up. What